Welcome back to the channel. Today's story will hold your chest tight and still make you smile. It is about a girl who thought she knew her whole world, until the ground shifted beneath her. She grew up in a small but lively home where laughter carried from the kitchen to the backyard. To her, her mother was her everything, strong, hardworking, and always ready with a sharp word and a soft touch. She believed that the man she called father, though distant and stern, was just the way men were. He provided food, paid school fees, and nodded when she greeted. What more was there to ask? But deep inside her mother's eyes, there was something hidden, like a door carefully locked with no key in sight. Whenever the girl asked questions about how her parents met or why her father never stayed long at home, her mother would wave it off with jokes. "Your father is a serious man, don't disturb him with stories," she would say, pushing a plate of hot food into her hands. And the girl, being young and trusting, always let it go. Yet, truth has a way of rising like smoke, you can't hold it down forever. One day, while cleaning out old boxes in the store, she stumbled upon a photograph. A young man with her same wide smile, her same nose, even the small dimple she always thought was hers alone. The picture was tucked inside a letter, and though the paper had faded, the words still burned. "I will fight to be in her life, no matter what you say." Her hands trembled as she read. Who was this man? Why did he look so much like her? The girl's chest tightened, questions flooding faster than her heart could beat. She ran to her mother, clutching the photo and letter, but the woman's face fell as if the sky had just collapsed. That was the day a door unlocked, and the secret began to slip out, bit by bit. The house grew heavy that evening. Her mother sat on the wooden chair, hands pressed together, eyes darting anywhere but her daughter's face. The girl stood there, restless, the photograph still clenched in her palm. Silence stretched so long that even the ticking of the wall clock sounded louder than usual. At last, her mother sighed, a deep sound that carried years of weight. "That man," she began softly, "is your real father." The girl felt her knees weaken. She thought it was a joke, one of those stories her mother liked to twist, but her mother's trembling lips told her otherwise. She dropped to the edge of the chair, her chest rising and falling fast. Her mother spoke slowly, as if each word cost her strength. She told of a young love, bright and fierce, cut short by family disapproval. Her real father was gentle, poor, and determined, but her grandmother never agreed to the union. "He had nothing," her mother whispered, "and I was expected to marry someone who could provide." Tears welled in the girl's eyes. "So who is the man in the other room?" she asked, her voice cracking. Her mother swallowed hard. "He is not your blood. He married me after I was forced to let go. He gave you his name, his roof, and his money. But he is not your father." The room tilted. She remembered all the years she spent wondering why her father never hugged her, never laughed with her, never truly looked at her. Now she understood, because she was not his. Her mother reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The photograph burned in her grip like fire. She felt betrayed, like the ground beneath her feet had been stolen. Everything she thought she knew about herself, her smile, her dimple, her nose, suddenly belonged to a stranger. That night, she lay in bed with her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. The house felt unfamiliar, the walls tighter, the air heavier. Somewhere deep inside, anger and curiosity began to grow side by side. She needed answers, and she was ready to find the man who carried her face. Morning came, but it did not bring peace. The girl moved through the house like a shadow, barely touching her food, barely meeting her mother's eyes. Every sound, the clatter of pots, the shuffle of slippers on the tiled floor, felt sharper, louder. The secret had cracked something open, and nothing seemed the same. Her stepfather, unaware of what had been uncovered, sat in the living room reading the newspaper. He raised his head once, grunted, and went back to his pages. She stared at him quietly, searching his face for traces of warmth she never found. It stung now to know why. She was never really his. The photograph called to her from where she had hidden it under her pillow. In it, the man's smile looked alive, almost waiting for her. She wondered what his voice sounded like, how he laughed, how he would look at her if he saw her now. Would he recognize her? Would he claim her? By afternoon, she could no longer sit still. She cornered her mother in the kitchen, her voice trembling with both fear and fire. "Where is he? Where is my father?" Her mother froze with the spoon in her hand. Oil hissed in the pan, but she did not move. "It is not that simple," she whispered. The girl pressed on. "Tell me. You cannot keep him from me forever." Her mother turned slowly, eyes wet, face tired. "He wanted to stay. He wanted to be here. But my family drove him away. I thought I was protecting you. I thought stability mattered more than love. Please, my child, don't go looking for trouble." But the girl was already restless with determination. She could not carry half a truth, not when her whole life suddenly felt like a lie. Her heart thumped hard, her palms sweating. Deep inside, a voice whispered, "Find him." And for the first time, she realized she would not stop until she did. The days that followed stretched like long, stubborn threads. At school, she sat in class but heard nothing. Her friends laughed over silly jokes, but her smile never came. Every time she closed her eyes, the man in the photograph appeared, looking at her as though he had been waiting for years. At home, she began watching her mother closely. She noticed how her mother avoided the storeroom now, how she jumped when the girl asked even the smallest questions. The silence between them grew wider, almost like a river too deep to cross. One evening, when her stepfather had gone out, the girl slipped into her mother's bedroom. She opened drawers slowly, her hands trembling, until she found a small box under folded clothes. Inside were letters, many letters, some unopened, some stained with tears. She pulled one out and read quickly. "I will never stop searching for her. She is mine as much as she is yours." Her chest tightened. He had been fighting for her. He had not abandoned her. She clutched the letter to her chest when suddenly, her mother's voice cut through the room. "What are you doing?" The girl jumped, the box nearly falling from her hands. Her mother stood by the door, her face pale and stern. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, the girl lifted the letter high. "Why didn't you let him see me? Why?" Her mother's lips quivered, but no sound came. The air grew heavy with unspoken words. Finally, she whispered, "Because I was afraid. Afraid he would take you from me." The girl's eyes burned with tears. "But he is my father. He has the right to know me." Her mother reached forward as though to take the letter, but the girl stepped back, clutching it tight. The space between them felt wider than ever, filled with anger, hurt, and questions too sharp to swallow. That night, as she lay awake, one thought became clear in her mind. She would find him, with or without her mother's help. The weekend came, and with it, her courage. She tucked the photograph and one of the letters into her school bag, careful not to let her mother see. Her heart raced as if it knew she was stepping into dangerous ground. She had no plan, only a burning need. The letter carried an address, though faded with age. She didn't know if it still existed, but it was the only thread she had. That morning, she slipped out of the house early, her footsteps quick on the quiet street. The sun had just begun to rise, painting the sky with pale orange. Every neighbor she passed seemed to know something, or so it felt. She kept her head down and walked faster. The bus ride was long. She stared out the window, clutching the photograph in her lap. With each turn of the wheels, her mind raced. What if he doesn't want me? What if he has a new family? What if he doesn't even remember me? But then she would glance at the dimple in his smile and whisper to herself, "He will know me." When she arrived, the street looked worn, lined with small houses that had seen better days. Children played outside, their laughter loud, their slippers slapping against the dust. She stood for a moment, unsure, then asked a woman selling oranges by the roadside if she knew the man from the address. The woman squinted, wiping sweat from her brow. "Ah, yes. He used to live there," she said, pointing to a small house with a cracked gate. "But he left some years back. No one knows where he went." The girl's heart dropped. The hope that had carried her there deflated like a balloon with a pinprick. She stood frozen, staring at the house that once held him. The windows were shut, the compound quiet. It felt like she had arrived too late. But then, as if fate was teasing, a little boy ran past, shouting, "Uncle will come back next week." The girl's ears perked. She turned quickly. "Which uncle?" she asked. The boy stopped, tilting his head. "The one who lives in that house. He travels, but he comes home sometimes." Her heart leapt again. There was still a chance. The girl could barely sleep that night. The words of the little boy kept ringing in her ears. "He will come back next week." Each hour dragged like a heavy chain, her mind chasing after what it would feel like to finally meet him. At home, her mother noticed her new silence but said nothing. Perhaps she feared the storm she had already unleashed. The girl moved like someone with a secret, her steps lighter, her eyes darting with quiet excitement. She was waiting, just waiting. The following Saturday, she dressed early, her heart thumping as though it was already ahead of her. She carried the photograph, folded neatly inside her bag, and set out once again for the street with the cracked gate. The house was still and quiet when she arrived. She stood by the gate, her palms sweaty, her chest tight. Minutes stretched into hours as she sat on a stone nearby, watching, waiting. Children passed, people came and went, but there was no sign of him. Just when doubt began to creep in, a taxi pulled up by the roadside. A man stepped out, tall and lean, carrying a worn bag over his shoulder. His hair had strands of gray, his face a little older, but when he smiled at the neighbors who greeted him, the dimple appeared, her dimple. The girl froze. Her throat tightened, her breath caught. She wanted to run to him, to shout, to throw her arms around him, but her legs felt heavy. Instead, she clutched her bag, whispering to herself, "That is him." He walked through the cracked gate slowly, nodding as children shouted, "Uncle is back." His voice, deep and warm, floated across the compound as he laughed. And though she had never heard it before, something inside her stirred, a recognition deeper than blood. Her eyes blurred with tears. She wiped them quickly, scared he might vanish if she looked away. She had found him, at last. But now came the harder part, how to step forward and say, "I am your daughter." The moment stretched like a drumbeat in her chest. She watched him move about, shaking hands with neighbors, smiling easily as though the world had never been cruel. Her fingers dug into the strap of her bag. Her voice wanted to leap out, but fear held it back. At last, gathering what little courage she had, she rose from the stone where she sat and walked slowly toward the gate. Each step felt heavier than the last, yet she could not stop. Her legs carried her forward until she stood just inside the compound, her heart pounding loud enough that she was sure the children could hear it. The man noticed her then. His laughter softened as his eyes rested on her face. He tilted his head, studying her. She panicked and quickly pulled the photograph from her bag, holding it up with trembling hands. "This," her voice cracked, "this is you, isn't it?" He looked at the photograph, and something in his expression shifted. His smile faded into shock, his lips parting as though a forgotten memory had suddenly returned. Slowly, he nodded. "Yes, that was me. Long ago." Her chest rose and fell rapidly. She clutched the picture tighter. Then I am your daughter." The words hung in the air like thunder. The compound grew still, even the children paused their play. The man's eyes widened, his face draining of color. He dropped his bag to the ground, taking one uncertain step closer. "My daughter." His voice trembled, almost breaking. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Mama told me." She hid it all, but I know now." He covered his mouth with his hand, his body shaking slightly as though the earth had shifted beneath him. For a moment, he could not speak. Then, slowly, he reached out his hand, unsure, afraid she might vanish if he touched her. The girl looked at his trembling fingers, her own hand hovering in the air. It was the moment she had dreamed of, the moment she feared. Blood called to blood, but years of silence stood between them. And still, the world seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, neither of them moved. It was as if time itself had frozen, trapping them in that fragile space between past and present. Then, almost without realizing it, she placed her hand in his. His grip was warm, trembling, but sure, like someone who had finally touched a dream long chased. The man's eyes filled with tears. He drew her closer, his voice breaking. "My child, my own blood." He pulled her into an embrace so tight she could feel the years of longing in his arms. Neighbors glanced from their windows, whispering, but she no longer cared. For the first time, she felt whole. When they finally pulled apart, he cupped her face gently, studying every line. "You have her eyes," he whispered, "but the rest is mine. I knew I would know you the moment I saw you." Her tears spilled freely. "Why did you let them take you away? Why didn't you fight harder?" His shoulders sagged under the weight of memory. "I did fight. I wrote, I begged, I came. But doors were slammed, threats were made. I had nothing, no money, no power. Your grandmother told me if I kept trying, I would destroy your mother's life. I thought staying away would give you peace. But not a single day passed that I did not think of you." The girl bit her lip, torn between anger and tenderness. "All these years, I thought you abandoned me." He shook his head fiercely. "Never. I have always been here," he said, pressing her hand against his chest. "Right here." She closed her eyes, letting the moment sink deep into her bones. For so long she had lived with questions, and now she finally held an answer. It did not erase the years, but it gave her a piece of herself back. Still, in the back of her mind, she knew this new truth would shake everything at home. Her mother's fear, her stepfather's silence, none of it could hide the fire that had already started. The truth had stepped into the open, and nothing could push it back into the dark. The walk back home felt different. Her steps were lighter, yet her mind buzzed with storms. She had found him. She had touched him. But now came the hardest part, bringing this truth into the house where silence had ruled for years. When she entered, her mother was waiting, sitting in the living room with her hands clasped together. It was as if she already knew. The girl dropped her bag, her eyes steady. "I saw him," she said simply. Her mother flinched, her lips parting, but no words came. The girl pressed on. "You lied to me. All these years, you kept him away. Do you know what that did to me? Do you know the hole it left?" Tears sprang to her mother's eyes. "I was trying to protect you. I wanted you to have stability, a roof, a name. He had nothing then. What would life have been if I had chosen love over survival?" The girl shook her head, her voice trembling with both anger and hurt. "But you stole my right to know him. You gave me half a life when I could have had a full one." Her stepfather, who had been sitting quietly with the newspaper in his hand, suddenly spoke. His voice was sharp, edged with something deeper. "Enough. I will not have this conversation in my house." Both mother and daughter turned toward him. His eyes were dark, his jaw tight. "I raised you, I fed you, I clothed you," he said. "And now you stand here, spitting on everything I've done?" The girl's chest heaved. "I am grateful for the roof. But I cannot deny my blood. He is my father, whether you like it or not." The room crackled with tension. Her mother buried her face in her palms, torn between two worlds. Her stepfather's anger filled the air, heavy and unyielding. The girl stood in the middle, her voice steady now. "The truth is out," she said quietly. "And it cannot be buried again." The silence that followed was thick, but deep inside, she knew there was no turning back. The storm had begun, and it was only the beginning. The days that followed were heavy, each one filled with silence and unspoken words. Her stepfather grew colder, his glances sharp as knives, while her mother moved about the house like a shadow, guilt written in every step. The girl, however, had found a new fire inside her. She could no longer be the same child who swallowed questions. The truth had changed her. She began visiting her father often, sneaking away when she could. Each time she saw him, she discovered pieces of herself she never knew were missing. The way he laughed with ease, the way he told stories that stretched into the night, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. For the first time, she felt claimed, not by a name, not by obligation, but by blood and love. One Sunday afternoon, her mother finally followed her. The girl turned and froze when she saw her mother standing quietly at the compound gate, watching. Her father, noticing, stood up slowly. The air tightened. Years of pain sat between them like a wall. Her mother's eyes glistened. "You never stopped, did you?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "Never. I carried her in my heart every day." The girl looked between them, her throat aching. She wanted to scream, to demand, to cry, but instead she whispered, "Please, can we stop fighting? I don't want to live torn in half." Her mother's shoulders slumped as tears spilled freely. She turned to her daughter, voice cracking. "I was wrong. I thought I was saving you. But all I did was wound you." Her father stepped closer, his voice steady but gentle. "We cannot change the past. But maybe, for her sake, we can change what comes next." For the first time, her mother nodded. Slowly, painfully, but she nodded. The girl stepped forward, placing one hand in each of theirs, pulling them together. The neighbors watching from the compound murmured, some wiping their eyes. It was not a perfect ending. There were scars, deep ones, and the road ahead would not be smooth. But in that moment, under the fading sun, the girl felt something she had long craved, belonging. The truth had exploded, yes, but from its ashes, a new beginning quietly took root.